The word for the mind in Pali is chitta. The original meaning is a quality of really being intent on what we are doing. It's sense of an element of the right effort, and which is one base of the success. So we have to give this practice our whole mind, our whole heart, our full intent, so that the result will be full and complete. So when we begin to sit meditation, we have to decide whether we want to dabble around, to roll around, or whether we had enough. If we're still wanting out, then the path is all laid out from the right view through the right concentration, which means that we're trying to endow our concentration with all the factors of the path: virtue, concentration, and discernment. All these things should come together in our practice. So as we focus on the breath, we try to do it in the virtuous way. Do it with the restraint, but remind ourselves we can't go wandering off, dabbling in this, dabbling in that. We have really got to be true to the themes of our concentration. And our concentration should be discerning which way of the focusing on the breath make the mind uncomfortable, which make the breath uncomfortable, which way of the focusing, which way of thinking about the breath, which the way of labeling and understanding the breath help make it more comfortable, easy to stay here, so that it does become our home. I like to call the breath as home. Coming back home is always more happy. So no matter where you go, the home is always coming back, welcoming back, nourishing on the path. That's how our discernment works. We want to bring all these kinds of qualities together: virtue, concentration, and discernment. If you leave any of them out, the path is not complete. When it's not complete, it can't work well. And the real ignorance is not ignorance of the words or the principle. It is the ignorance of what is going on in the mind. This is a true, real ignorance. It is the ignorance of how we are causing ourselves suffering, or in the broader sense, it is the ignorance of Four Noble Truth, ignorance of where this suffering right now, and the suffering of what we are doing to cause the suffering, the ignorance of what you could be doing to put an end to the suffering, and the ignorance what the end of suffering would be like. These are the four things that we supposed to pay attention to. The first question that you come to the suffering is why, not want. It has to be why we are suffering. Because there are things that happening right inside the mind. They are not happening in the words. They are not happening in the books that you're reading. They are happening in the mind. But the word just simply pointing this thing. The word just simply pointing this thing, especially to our experience of the suffering, is something that nobody else is experiencing. That suffering is as close as we get to really purely personal experience. There's no way that we can take it out and show it to us. I think the scientists studying our brain and can see all sort of indicators that we might be in pain, but they cannot actually see our suffering, right? They can see that, oh, this brain, this part is not perfect. This part is ill. This part is disorder. But doctor never see our suffering. We see our own suffering and direct experience. Doctor never have direct experience as we are. So there no way that we can compare our suffering to anyone else to see who's suffering more, exactly what it tastes like or what it feels like. But it is something you can know for yourself. So you should pay attention to it. And this is universal truth. What the meaning of the Four Noble Truths is that they are not some abstract teaching whose truth is peculiar to India 2,600 years ago. But there are things happening right here, right now, and they are happening every day, very directly in our awareness. So to chip away at that ignorance, we start by focusing on something more obviously happening right here, right now, the breath. You know, in the Buddha's analysis of the suffering, ignorance, condition, fabrication, avijja, paccaya, sankhara, ignorance, conditions, fabrication. Ignorance is avijja, paccaya is conditioning, sankhara is fabrication or mental formation. Either bodily fabrication is the breath, right? If you breathe with the ignorance, it can be a condition for the suffering. That's what I mean. If you breathe with knowledge and awareness, it can help cut through the suffering. It can help you to see your suffering, your ignorance more clearly. And we see our ignorance more clearly. We are replacing it with knowledge already. So when we are focused on the breath, learning to breathe comfortably, allowing the mind to relate in a comfortable way with the breath, we are taking a stand against ignorance and all the ignorant thoughts process that go on through the day. You are putting up a resistance to them, that you can understand them. It's through understanding that we can go beyond them, transcend them. And this is universal. These principles are universal. And that's why the Buddha called them Ariya Satya, Ariya Satya, which I can translate as noble truth. The word Ariya, in addition to the meaning noble, also means standard. I don't know. I translate in my own understanding. and I believe it's true. Ariya means standard. We are not standard. Our thought is not standard. Our speech is not standard. Our action is not standard. So we are not Ariya. So we are going to, what we are doing here now is try to standardize the mind to be standard, to be Ariya, noble. We are nobling our mind. And this is the sense of universal standard. So this truth, the Four Noble Truths, are not only nobles, they are universal standards too. Why I say universal? Because they apply to all of us with no exception. They are something we all have in common. We each experience the suffering and the cause of the suffering for ourselves alone. But the pattern of our suffering is something we have in common, which is why the path to the end of the suffering is universal too. Doesn't matter what country you come from, doesn't matter what your background, what your language. It's not about the language, it's about the mind. You don't want to be perfect in language, don't want to be perfect in whatever, but mind can be perfect when you nobling it, standardize it. The past is really work across the board. If you're able to apply it in all fairness, if you realize that this is something that applies to you as much as it does to anyone else. I mean, most of us like to think of ourselves as an exception to the rule. I don't know why. We like to think that it's going on to be different for us somehow, especially when you hear of all the effort that the various teacher putting into the practice. We rather not have to do all that work. We think that maybe things should be easier for us because we are better educated, or maybe we know more in our culture. Well, no, we don't. Our problems are just the same as they are. They may be dressed up a little bit differently in each case, but at the root, we are all the same. Ajahn, my mom said that people are all alike. But then if you look at a little deeper, you see that they're really not. But then when you look deeper still, you see that they really are. So she comment that take that and think about it for a while. There are some differences, but what we have in common is what really important. Suffering, cause of suffering, the end of the suffering, and the way to end the suffering. This is what really important and common deeply. When we chant aging, illness, death, separation, these are things we all have in common. The chant is a little bit lacking in that simply remind you that you are subject to aging, subject to illness, subject to death. This is common for everyone. We are subject to be separated from things that we love. Life starts out. We are always learning new things, gaining new things. But then it reaches a point where they all start going away. Right? When you do have left is your action. You will fall heir to what you do, say, and think. And the results depend on whether you do, say, and think is skillful or not. And that's why the Buddha said, thinking about this result, this truth, as they apply to ourselves, keeps we from doing unskillful things. We realize, oh my God, if I allow myself to think a lot of unskillful stuff today, the results are going to seep out into my words. They're going to seep out in my action. So then we will start not just thinking unskillful things, but also doing and saying unskillful things. That's all begin to pile up. Do you want that? No. Bless everyone sharing loving kindness, happy mind to all being. May our being be wealthy. May our being be healthy. May our being be prosperity. May our being be out of danger. May our being be free from the suffering. Sape satta avera hotu. Apaya pacha hotu. Anika hotu. Sukhi atanang pariharantu. Thank you, everyone. Wish you all having a great night. We'll see you next time.